The manager said I could not afford anything in his luxury shop, but he did not know my husband had just bought the entire company. On a historic street in Vienna, the shop, Meister Geigen von Strauss, glittered with the world's most precious instruments. I walked in, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, hoping to inquire about an antique violin. The manager looked at me, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. "I am afraid you are in the wrong place," he said, his voice cold. "The instruments here are quite expensive." His words felt like a slap. A few other customers glanced over. My face grew hot, but I did not respond. I turned and walked out of the shop. The next day, my husband's Bentley pulled up right in front of the store. I stepped out and looked through the glass. The manager stood there, his eyes wide with shock. I did not go inside. I just looked directly at him, then turned and walked away. I am Clara Dubois, a classical music event organizer. After finishing a business trip in Vienna, I visited Meister Geigen von Strauss on a historic street, a place that housed the world's most precious instruments. I wanted to find a gift for my old professor, Ilara Voss, who was about to receive a major Lifetime Achievement Award. The gift had to express my gratitude, something that went beyond words. With my work done, I was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, not expecting to be judged by my appearance. As I entered the shop, I saw the antique violin, the Vienna Sonnet, displayed in a gleaming glass case. I knew instantly it was the perfect gift. It was not just an instrument, it was a legacy, a piece of the musical history my professor cherished. Giving it to her would be like returning a piece of the musical soul she had imparted to me. The manager, Julian Adler, noticed me immediately. He did not hide his disdain, his eyes sweeping over me from head to toe before he turned to whisper to another employee, as if I had come only to daydream. He insulted me the moment I walked into Meister Geigen von Strauss in my simple jeans and sweater. "The instruments here are very expensive," he said, his eyes dripping with contempt. My face burned, but I tried to ignore him, walking straight to the display case. I found it. The Vienna Sonnet, resting alone, illuminated like a treasure. I stood there, admiring its beauty, my heart full of hope for the gift for my professor. "Guten Tag." Julian's voice boomed from behind me, full of arrogance. I turned. "It is beautiful, is it not?" he asked, his tone laced with insinuation. "But perhaps you should know, its annual insurance premium alone is far beyond what you could afford." He did not ask what I wanted, did not offer any information, just implicitly assumed I could not afford it. His words felt like a slap. I wanted to retort, but my anger silenced me. I left, my heart heavy. Our conversation had not even begun. Yet he had already ended it with an insult. And that is what started it all. "The classic instrument display area is reserved for registered collectors," he said. "Perhaps you would like to see the student models on the other side?" He gestured toward a darker corner of the room. I kept my voice calm. "Hello. I am genuinely interested in this violin. Could you tell me more about its history and its price?" Adler chuckled, a small, dry sound. "Madam, this is the Vienna Sonnet. Its value is equivalent to a penthouse apartment in the first district. We cannot waste our artisans' time answering questions from those who are merely curious." He said it loudly enough for others to hear. A famous cellist trying an instrument nearby looked up. He glanced at me, then at Adler. There was a hint of embarrassment in his eyes. I knew Adler had done it on purpose. My patience was gone. I looked him directly in the eye. "I have the financial means." That statement changed everything. His feigned politeness vanished. Adler was now openly annoyed. "Really?" he asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Madam, transactions here are conducted through private Swiss banks, not with ordinary credit cards. Now, if you will excuse me, I have an important appointment." It was a dismissal, an insult. Just then, a young man emerged from the workshop in the back. He wore a leather apron and looked nervous. "Mr. Adler, perhaps I can help the lady." "Get back to the polishing workshop, Leo. This is not your concern," Julian snapped, cutting him off with a glare. Leo retreated, His face flushed. That was enough. I said no more. There was no point. I looked Julian Adler in the eye one last time. I saw undisguised contempt there. I turned and walked straight out the door. As I pushed the heavy oak door, the small brass bell chimed. This time, it did not sound clear. It sounded like a weary sigh. The flight from Vienna to London took just over 2 hours, but the feeling of humiliation lasted much longer. I returned to our home in Holland Park. It was quiet, a stark contrast to the noise in my head. Alistair, my husband, was in his study. He sat before several screens displaying complex financial charts. He was a man of numbers and logic. He looked up as I walked in. He only needed to look at me for a second. He did not need to ask. He knew immediately something was wrong. "Tea?" he asked. We sat in the living room. He made tea, the Earl Grey I loved. He said nothing, just waited for me to be ready. It was one of the things I loved about him. He always gave me space. Finally, I told him everything. I told him about the shop, about Julian Adler, about the violin. I told him about the way he looked at me, the way he spoke, and the silence of the others. When I finished, I added, "Alistair, I am not really angry because he looked down on me. I am used to that. I am angry because of the attitude. I thought of the children at Fondation Lumière. I thought of Omar, the Syrian refugee with a prodigious talent. I thought of all the other children we were helping. If one day," I said, "Omar saves up enough money to walk into a place like that, would he be treated the same way? Would his talent be extinguished by that kind of arrogance? That is what makes me angry." Alistair was silent for a long time. He gazed out the window, but I knew he was not really seeing anything. He was thinking. Then he turned back to me. He reached across the table and took my hand. His hand was warm and firm. "Clara," he said, his voice deep and decisive, "you have taught me that true value cannot be measured in money. It is time we taught them that lesson." He did not say much. He did not need to. I saw the determination in his blue eyes. And I knew Julian Adler would soon regret this day. That evening, we did not speak of revenge. Revenge is a simple and hot-headed emotion. Alistair's plan was different. It was cold, precise, and carefully calculated. We did not discuss revenge. We discussed a performance, a lesson in truth. "I will not go to Vienna," Alistair said as we sat in his study. "My presence would be too obvious. We need a more subtle approach." He looked at me. "Tomorrow, my lawyer will go to Vienna. He will not be representing me. He will be someone else entirely." Alistair picked up the phone. The first call was to Zurich, to his private lawyer, Mr. Dubois, a discreet and efficient Swiss gentleman. I listened as Alistair spoke in German, his voice calm and his instructions clear. He outlined a role for Mr. Dubois, a weary representative of an anonymous tycoon, someone who had grown tired of auctions and wanted a private transaction. The second call was to Paris, this time to a renowned art appraiser, an old friend of my family. Alistair explained the situation. The friend's task was to provide Mr. Dubois with all the necessary technical information about the Vienna sonnet, enough for him to speak like a true expert. The final call was to his personal assistant. He requested a complete file on a fictitious collector, including a transaction history and the necessary bank documents. Everything had to be perfect. No loose ends. When he put the phone down, the room fell silent. An elegant, European-style play had been staged. The actors had their roles. The stage was set. Tomorrow, the performance would begin. And Julian Adler would be the main audience, though he did not know it yet. The next day, in Vienna, everything went according to plan. An elderly gentleman walked into Meister Geigen von Strauss. He wore a perfectly tailored Italian suit and carried a classic leather briefcase. He looked slightly weary and impatient, like a man who was so accustomed to wealth that it no longer excited him. It was Mr. Dubois, Alistair's lawyer. But today, he introduced himself as Mr. Rossi. He told the receptionist in a low voice that he was there to represent an anonymous collector. His client wanted a quick and discreet purchase, away from the noisy auction houses. The information was immediately relayed to Julian Adler. Julian's reaction was exactly as Alistair had predicted. He acted as if he had struck gold. An anonymous, wealthy collector wanting a private deal, it was the dream of every high-end sales manager. It meant a huge commission with no competition. Julian rushed out of his office. He greeted Mr. Rossi with a radiant smile and an enthusiasm I had not seen the day before. "Mr. Rossi, what a tremendous honor," he said. "Please, this way. We have a private listening room to ensure your absolute comfort and privacy." He led Mr. Dubois into a luxurious room, paneled with wood and covered with Persian rugs. He immediately signaled for an employee to bring out a bottle of Austria's finest wine. "Please make yourself at home," Julian said, personally pouring a glass for Mr. Dubois. "I will personally introduce you to our most precious masterpieces. Whatever your client desires, we can provide." He had no idea that the man sitting across from him was not a customer. He was a messenger, and the trap had been set. Julian Adler put on his best performance. He brought out the most valuable instruments, told their histories, and relentlessly flattered the discerning eye of the anonymous client. Mr. Dubois, in his role as Mr. Rossi, simply nodded politely. He examined each instrument with the air of an expert, thanks to the information provided by the appraiser in Paris. He waited for the right moment. After nearly an hour, when Julian thought he had completely won over his guest, Mr. Dubois stood up. He walked around the room and stopped in front of the glass case displaying the Vienna sonnet. He pointed to it. "My collector is particularly interested in this violin." Julian's eyes lit up. This was the grand prize. He eagerly agreed. "An impeccable choice. Sir, your client is truly a connoisseur," he said, his voice sycophantic. "It is fortunate that it is still here. Just yesterday, a rather common-looking woman insisted on buying it. Of course, I had to politely decline in order to reserve this masterpiece for someone who truly understands it, like your client." He had said it. He had tightened the noose himself. Mr. Dubois looked directly at Julian. His polite smile vanished. It was replaced by a cold, calm expression. "That common-looking woman," Mr. Dubois said, his voice clear and sharp, "was the founder of the Fondation Lumière, Mrs. Clara Dubois." He paused for a second to let the words sink in. "And the anonymous collector who sent me here," he continued, "is her husband." Mr. Dubois placed his leather briefcase on the table. He opened it and took out a thin file. He pushed it toward Julian. The first page was a photograph. It was a picture of Alistair and me, taken at a charity gala for the Lumière Foundation. Beneath it was a short article about the foundation's work. Julian Adler stared at the photograph. He looked at my face, then at Alistair standing beside me. He looked at the name Alistair Finch printed in bold. The color drained from his face. He stood frozen, his mouth agape, unable to speak. He looked like a statue, frozen mid-motion. Das ist unmöglich," he stammered in German. That is impossible." "Oh, it is entirely possible," Mr. Dubois continued, his voice now like ice. "And there is one more thing. Mrs. Dubois's husband, Mr. Dubois, Alistair Finch, believes that an instrument with a soul like the Vienna sonnet should not be in the hands of a soulless salesman." He stood up and buttoned his suit jacket. "He has authorized me to inform you of one final matter," he said, looking directly into Julian's horrified eyes. "This morning he completed the acquisition of the Strauss family's remaining shares in this shop. As of this moment, Mr. Alistair Finch is the new owner of Meister Geigen von Strauss's." Julian Adler did not fall. He simply collapsed where he stood. He had to lean on a chair to keep himself upright. His world, a world built on superficial judgments and fat commissions, had shattered in a matter of seconds. Mr. Dubois said nothing more. He left the file on the table, gave a slight nod, and quietly departed, leaving Julian alone in the terrifying silence of the luxurious listening room. That evening, I received an email from Julian Adler. It was short, filled with desperate apologies. He begged for a chance to talk, to explain, to keep his job. I showed the email to Alistair. He read it, then said, "He will have his chance, but not in the way he thinks." The next day, Mr. Dubois met with Julien again at the shop, but this time there was no acting. Mr. Dubois arrived as the legal representative of the new owner. Julien looked as though he had aged 10 years. He stood before Mr. Dubois, stripped of all his arrogance. "Mr. Dubois announced Alistair's decision. "Mr. Finch believes that firing you would be the easiest path, but not the best one," Mr. Dubois said. "He wants to give you an opportunity to learn a lesson. If you wish to keep your job here, you must accept the following conditions." Mr. Dubois produced a list. First, he said, "You, Julien Adler, will join the board of the Fondation Lumière for 1 year. You will receive no salary. Your duty will be to oversee the selection and scholarship program for young talents. You will have to go to poor neighborhoods, meet with immigrant families, and find the real hidden gems." Julien swallowed hard, but did not dare to object. Second, Mr. Dubois continued, "Meister Geigen von Strauss, as the property of Mr. Finch, will become the primary sponsor of the Lumière Foundation. The shop will provide free repair and maintenance services for all of the Foundation's students. You will personally supervise this program." And finally, Mr. Dubois said, his tone unchanging, regarding the violin, the Vienna Sonnet, "It will be transferred to Mrs. Clara Dubois. This transaction will be handled by another employee." He glanced at his notes. "Leo, the apprentice. He will be responsible for completing the paperwork. The entire commission from the sale of this instrument will be given to him. Mr. Finch believes it is a well-deserved bonus. The amount will be sufficient for him to attend the renowned instrument-making school in Cremona, Italy." Mr. Dubois folded the paper. "These are the conditions. You have 24 hours to decide. Accept them or leave." There was no other choice. Julien Adler, the man who had mocked me, would now be working for me. His lesson had only just begun. 3 months later, the shop Meister Geigen von Strauss had changed. The luxurious space, once reserved for the wealthy, had been transformed into a stage. The proud silence was gone, replaced by music and applause. It was the inaugural concert for the partnership between the shop and the Lumière Foundation. The main stage belonged to our young talents, children from all over the world, children who might never have had the chance to step inside this place without this change. I stood in a corner of the room, beside Alistair. I was not looking for Julien, but I saw him anyway. He was not wearing his usual expensive suit, just a simple shirt. He stood among the crowd, not as a manager, but as a member of the audience. I saw Julien listening intently as a young Ukrainian girl played a piece by Bach. She was only 12, and the violin in her hands was almost as big as she was. But the melody she created was powerful and full of emotion. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. I saw Julien clapping too, and for the first time I saw a genuine smile on his face, a warm, unfeigned smile. After the concert, Julien approached me. He seemed hesitant. "Mrs. Dubois," he began, his voice lacking its former confidence. "The performance was magnificent." "Thank you, Julien." "The children worked very hard," I replied. He was silent for a moment, then continued, his voice sincere. "I used to think that the value of a violin lay in the name of its maker and its price tag. But watching these children play, I realize its true value lies in the melodies it creates and the joy it brings." It was the most genuine apology he could offer. I nodded. "I am glad you understand, Julien." Just then, Alistair came to my side. He placed a hand on my shoulder, then turned to Julien. "We are planning to expand the Lumière Foundation globally," Alistair said. "We need an executive director who understands both business and music. Do you think you would be a good fit?" Julien was stunned. He looked at Alistair, then at me, unable to believe what he was hearing. A second chance, a real one, offered to him when he least expected it. I looked at Julien, who was still bewildered by the offer. I looked out at the stage, where Omar, our most talented refugee student, was carefully holding the Vienna Sonnet, which Professor Voss had lent him for the performance. I knew that the symphony of that day was not just about music. It was a symphony of truth, of compassion, and of the belief that the light of talent can shine its brightest when it is placed in a space of respect and understanding.